In this video, you'll get my personal tips and tricks on how to flawlessly pronounce the Russian alphabet. I'm a foreigner just like you, have been learning for 6 years now, и носители русского языка часто спрашивают меня, почему у меня практически нет акцента. So for each letter, I'll give you examples, how to pronounce it correctly, and also show you basically how I'm moving my tongue and my mouth in order to say it correctly. I'll also have my Russian girlfriend pronounce them correctly, so you also get the examples of a native speaker, how she pronounces it. Be sure to watch till the end of this video, because these tips and strategies will definitely help you improve your Russian accent. Давайте начнем. The first letter of the Russian alphabet is the letter A. A. And the great thing about this letter is that it looks and sounds exactly like the English A. So for most people watching this video, this should not be a problem. Now the good thing in Russian is that every letter is basically pronounced exactly the same all the time, with a couple of exceptions, but we'll get to that. Whereas in English, if you see the letter A, it could be like, for example, in the word arcade, it can be A. But in Russian, it's always an A sound. For example, mama, mama.
А. Мама. Ма-ма.
The second letter in the Russian alphabet is a little bit more difficult than the first one, and that's only because it doesn't look like the English equivalent. But this letter is a B, just a normal B, how we pronounce it in English. So the B. It looks more like a 6, but you'll kind of just have to understand and remember that this is a B. 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 You just pronounce it like a normal B. And an example of this word would be bank. Bank.
Б. Банк. Банк.
The third letter of the Russian alphabet is another false friend, how you can call it, because it looks like an English B, but in reality it's a V. So you just pronounce it like a V, V, V. The funny thing about this letter is that it's also already a word in Russian, which means like the word, if you see the letter V on its own, it means the preposition in. But it's also often used in words, for example, like vor, that's the word for thief, like vor. Вор в банке. В.
В. Вор. Вор.
The fourth letter in the Russian alphabet is the G. G. It may be difficult to recognize, so this is another letter that you'll just need to remember. But the great thing about this is that it is the English equivalent as far as pronunciation concerned as the G in good. So if you can say good, you can say the Russian G as in город, город, which means city, город.
Г. Город. Город.
The fifth letter in the Russian alphabet is also not too difficult, except for the fact that it looks different. This is the D, D, D. If you look at this letter, you might notice that it kind of looks like a little house on legs, basically, house on legs. And that's also good because the word for house in Russian is dom, dom, D. So it starts with a D, so this should probably help you better remember this letter, like the D, dom.
Д. Дом. Дом.
The sixth letter in the Russian alphabet is the letter Е. It looks like an English E, but you pronounce it a little bit different. And this is something where especially English speakers need to watch out a little bit, because very often online you see that this letter is always pronounced as Ye, Ye. And this gives a little bit of a problem because, for example, if then English speakers want to say the word for no, which is niet, they overemphasize this Ye part in the beginning. So it kind of sounds like niet, niet, and that doesn't sound too nice. If the ye is in the beginning of a word, then yeah, you pronounce it like yeah. Very much it's like this Y-E sound, basically. But if it's in the middle of a word, it just little bit softens the previous consonant mostly. So, нет, нет. But if you say it in the beginning of a word, for example, если, если, then suddenly you hear it very well. So make sure to pay attention to this. Another example of this would be the word for медленно. You see, like there's a ye as the second letter, but if I say медленно, медленно, you don't hear this y sound like in there. So just медленно, медленно.
Е. Если. Если.
The 7th letter is the yo. It looks like just like an E with like 2 dots on top of it, but it's pronounced as yo, yo, yolki, yolki, yo, yo. And for English speakers, this would also not be too difficult since you can say the O sound and all you need to do is like a Y sound in front of it. But this word has the same, this letter has the same problem, kind of the same extra thing, just like the previous yeah. If it's at the beginning of a word, you make sure to say like yo, yo. But if it's like somewhere in the middle of a word, you don't put like this super emphasis on the y sound before the o, and you just make sure that the previous letter gets a little bit softer. Oh, and one last thing that I forgot to say is that if the y or the yo is after a vowel, then you should emphasize the y again a little bit. For example, in the word прием, прием, here you hear that there's an actual yo sound.
Йо. Ёлка. Ёлка.
The 8th letter in the Russian alphabet is the zh, zh. It looks like a squid, zh, zh. So you'll just have to remember this one. The good thing about this letter is that there is an English equivalent. For example, if you have the word for vision, vision, as in, to see, then this SE combination sounds exactly like the Russian zh, vision, vision. So remember this when you try to pronounce the zh. Another good thing about the zh is that, in order to better remember it, is that the word for I see, like the conjugation, is viju, 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 which means I see. So you can remember that the zh is in vision, and vision means I see. And if you're looking at the letter, I am seeing it.
Ж. Жизнь. Жизнь.
So the 9th letter in the Russian alphabet is the number 3. Just kidding. It's actually the letter Z, Z. But it looks like a 3 if you read it, so it'll take a while to get used to knowing that this is actually a Z. The good thing about this letter is that it's actually very comparable to the English Z, as in zoom. You just say Z, 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 Z. You make sure that your tongue vibrates. An example of a common word with the Z is the word for tomorrow. Завтра. Завтра.
Зе. Завтра. Завтра.
The 10th letter is something that most English speakers should watch out with a little bit because they tend to overdo it. It's the letter E. 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 Usually how this letter is pronounced, basically, or told like to non-native speakers, is that it's like in the English reals, like 2 E's after each other, and then you get this E sound. The only problem with that explanation is that it tends to like make it too long. For example, if I say reals, reals, then you can see my lower throat going forward a little bit, and this should not happen if you say the Russian E, E, reals, reals, E, 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 E. So that was the English E, E, and it should be more like an E, E. It should just be a sound that is kind of like in the upper back of your throat pronounced, and just like E. An example word of this would be интересно, which means interesting, as you might have guessed. Интересно. And not what some English speakers do. Интересно, интересно, интересно. E should be not as voluminous, if that makes any sense. So just keep it short in the upper back of your throat. E, E.
И. Интересно. Интересно.
The 11th letter of the Russian alphabet looks like an E, but it has a little roof on top. And it's a shorter version. It's basically a Y, Y. And there is an English equivalent. For example, if Russians write the word for New York, they write the York part as a short E and then org. So they say York, New York, York. So it's basically just the Y sound. And an example word of this in Russian would be the word for big, meaning большой, большой. Y, большой.
Е. Большой. Большой.
The 12th letter is finally a new easy letter because the K looks and sounds like the English K. So if you know how to say the K in English, you can say this letter and you can kind of forget about it. It's one of the 5 easy letters that are the same in English as in Russian. And an example of this would be a word for kot, kot, which means cat. Difficult language, right?
K. Kot. Kot.
The 13th letter of the Russian alphabet is the L. It doesn't look like an English equivalent L, but it does sound like an English equivalent L. So if you can say the word for level, level, you can say the Russian L as well. One thing that needs to be said about this letter is that often it will sound a little bit softer if there is basically a U, ya, ye, or yo after it, or a soft sign, but that's a completely different topic for another video because that takes a long time to explain. But for now, whenever you see an L, just pronounce it as a normal L. That should be good. L, l. So you put like your tongue against the roof of your mouth. L, l, lampa, lampa.
L. Lampa. Lampa.
We're back to a super easy letter, the M. The M looks and sounds like the English equivalent M. So let me also give you a word that is the same in Russian as in English, the word for manager. What do you think the word for manager in Russian is? Manager. So it basically almost sounds the same, except for the fact that you Russify it a little bit. Manager.
M. Manager. Manager.
The 15th letter of the Russian alphabet is another false friend, so you should watch out a little bit with this one because it looks like an English H, but in reality, in Russian, it's an N. The good thing about this N is that you pronounce it exactly like the English N. So if you can say the word for nanny, nanny, for example, then it means you can also say the Russian letter N. So you really push your tongue against the roof of your mouth, like An example word of this would be нет, нет.
N. Нет. Нет.
The 16th letter of the Russian alphabet is a very interesting letter because it causes so much problems for non-native speakers. And it's not because it's difficult to pronounce. It's actually very easy to pronounce. You simply pronounce it as an O. It looks like an O, and you pronounce it as an O, as in the English Lord, O, O. Now, the problem comes is that you only pronounce it some of the time as an O, and other times you pronounce it as an A. Now, why does this happen? This is mainly happening in the Moscow accent, but this is also the accent that is being spoken through on Russian TV, so I recommend you do this. Whenever the O in a word is stressed, then it's pronounced as an O. If the O is not stressed, then you pronounce it as an A. Let me give you an interesting word that has 3 O's in it if you write it, but 2 of them are pronounced as an A. Молоко. Молоко. You hear that the first 2 O's, since they're not stressed, since only the last vowel, the last O is stressed, you say basically молоко. So if you say молоко, молоко, it means milk, unexpectedly, right? So молоко. So this will take a while to get used to because unfortunately stresses in Russian are random. So basically whenever you're learning vocabulary, you would do wisely to either use sound with it or make sure that you are using something that puts like a stress mark underneath the part that is stressed, so you can better understand where the stresses should be and when you should pronounce the O as an O and when you should pronounce the O as an A.
О. Молоко. Молоко.
The 17th letter of the Russian alphabet is another letter that doesn't look like an English equivalent at all, but it actually is. This is the letter P. And it just looks like a roof, like a shelter. And this is something an example word of this would be papa. It has 2 P's in there, so 2 shelters. And when you're young, papa, papa, make sure you have a shelter above your head. So that might be some way to remember this letter. But the P is being pronounced exactly like the P in English, so papa.
П. Папа. Папа.
The 18th letter of the Russian alphabet also causes some trouble for non-native speakers, especially the ones that don't know how to roll their R's. You see, this letter looks like a P, but in reality, it's an R. And the way you pronounce it in Russian is you roll it. So you say rrr. If you don't know how to do this, then there are some tips on how to do this. For example, if you know how to say like a D, if you say a D in English, you already kind of touch the lower part of your front teeth. And if you then transition from saying a D to an R, and that's kind of how you roll your R. So if you say drr, 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 because when you say D, your tongue and your mouth's already kind of in the right position to roll your R's. And then you say drr, drr, and then if you want to keep on rolling your R, just make sure to breathe out from your mouth, like drr, drr, rrr, rrr. On how to do this exactly, I can make like an entire long video about that, so we're not going to go into detail here, but I'll make a video about this in the future. Okay, an example word of this would be the word for Russia. Россия, Россия, Россия.
R. Россия. Россия.
So the 19th letter is another false friend, because in English it looks like a C, but in Russian this C thing is actually an S. And the good thing is that this S is pronounced pretty much like a S, 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 as in sestra, sestra. It might take a while in the beginning to get used to it, to not read a C while you see this, but very quickly you'll get used to the fact that the C is an S.
S. Сестра. Сестра.
Finally, we got another easy letter with the 20th letter of the Russian alphabet, and that's the T. The good thing about this T is that it looks like a T and it actually sounds like a T. So if the word for brother, for example, would be brat, brat. So if you know how to pronounce a T in English, you'll have no problem with this letter.
T. Brat. Brat.
The 21st letter of the Russian alphabet is another false friend, which means that it looks like an English Y, but in Russian it's pronounced as an U. U. And the good thing about this U is that you can find English sounding equivalents. For example, if you say the word for football, the O, like the O sound there, is pronounced as an U, and it's the same as in Russian. So in Russian, if you want to say soccer or football, you say football, football, U. U. So just like put your lips forward, U. So this letter is also not too difficult for most non-native speakers.
U. Football. Football.
The 22nd letter of the Russian alphabet may look a little bit difficult because it's like a circle with a line through it. But if you ever had any Greek, then you might recognize this a little bit because this is the F. 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 And the good thing is about this F actually has an English sounding equivalent because it's just like the regular F in English. So an interesting word for this would be the word for philosopher, philosopher. In Russian, philosopher is philosoph, philosoph. So you can hear that like the PH or the F sound in English is just like the F.
F. Philosoph. Philosoph.
The 23rd letter of the Russian alphabet might cause some problems for people. That's because it looks like an X, but in reality it's a very hard H. And the English equivalent, there is no English equivalent, except for maybe what some people say. How do Scottish people say Loch Ness? Loch. That might be a way. So if you know how people say like Loch Ness, that's basically how also the Russian sounds. Basically, if you try to say a thing that might help here is if you say the word for the H in the word for human, like y, and then actually put your tongue a little more back, like you, and try to press the sound, press like the airflow around your tongue. Try to make your tongue close the air coming from your throat and let the air kind of sip out in front. So an example word for this would be the word for I want, хочу, хочу. That's the first person conjugation of хотеть. Я хочу. And again, this is a pretty difficult letter, so it basically requires a complete video to explain everything, which is out of the scope for this small video, but it's being pronounced as a H.
Ха. Хочу. Хочу.
The 24th letter is also not too difficult. It just looks a little difficult. It kind of looks like a bucket with a little tail. And this is the ts, ts. Basically, if in English you take like a T and an S after each other, that's the way you pronounce this letter. For example, as in bits, bits, bits of something. Bits, ts, ts, T-S, ts, ts. And an example word of this would be the word for tsar. Tsar. If you say the English tsar, it's basically the same as the Russian tsar, except in Russian you use one ts letter, and in English you use the T and the S after each other. Ts, tsar, tsar, ts, tsar. So this letter usually doesn't cause too much problems for non-native speakers.
Це. Царь. Царь.
The 25th letter of the Russian alphabet usually also doesn't cause much problems for non-native speakers. It looks like a 4, but it's pronounced as a ch, ch, as in the CH English equivalent in the word for chips or check, for example. So if you can say check, can you check that for me? Then you know how to say the ch in Russian. An example word in Russian for with the ch would be the word check. Except in Russian, this means like the bill after you pay something or the receipt. Check, check. So this should also be quite easy. Ch, check.
Че. Check. Check.
The 26th letter of the Russian alphabet is also quite easy for non-native speakers. It's the sh, sh. It looks like a weird W, like a sh, sh. And this letter is basically a way to pronounce the English equivalent would be if you say the word for sharp, sharp, sharp. It's exactly the same, sharp. And an English Russian word for this would be shum, 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 which means noise, loud noise. Shum, shum, sh, shum. This is pronounced by taking, if these are your teeth, you kind of like upper teeth, lower teeth, you kind of take your tongue and put them like in between and then sh. Put your lips forward and then just push air out. Shum.
Ше. Шум. Шум.
Now we get one of the most fun letters in the Russian alphabet. Is the sh, sh. And it took me several years actually before I understood this letter. In the beginning, I didn't even realize the difference between the sh, previous letter that we had, and the sh, the one that basically looks the same except for the fact that it has a little tail. And let me try to explain this by using the previous word, sharp, sharp. If you use the difference between these letters, like if you say sharp, it uses a sh. But if you want to use the sh, it's a little bit more soft actually. And if I would say the word sharp, but then use the sh, it would be like sharp, sharp. Can you hear the difference? That it's a lot softer basically. Normal, sharp, and now the sh, sharp, sharp. And the way you pronounce this letter is you basically, first you try to make a sh sound. And then what you do is you kind of put your tongue a little bit backwards and kind of, so just, and move it like a little bit down below and move a little bit backwards. Sh, sh, sh. And what some people say that it's kind of like if you make a SH sound and then a CH sound after each other, like sh, sh. Again, this might be a difficult letter, so it also requires like a complete video to explain everything, but this is the basics on how I learned to say the sh. An example word of this would be the word for yesho, 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 which means still or more, or so yesho, yesho. If you find this letter difficult, no worries. Like I said, it took me a couple years before I got it, so it's really no problem if you don't even hear the difference between the sh and the sh.
Ща. Еще. Еще.
This letter is something that takes a while to explain because it's a letter without a sound. It's the tвердый знак, or the hard sign, and what it does, it creates a hard stop in the word. So if you ever see like the tвердый знак, the hard sign, it means that you kind of like stop the word there and then continue saying. So an example of this would be the word for подъезд, подъезд, под, pause, есть, подъезд. So the good thing about this letter is that it's not very common. And once you kind of understand, it's like, oh, if it's there, I just take a little pause and that's it. And then you can continue. So this should be relatively easy.
Твердый знак. Подъезд. Подъезд.
The 29th letter of the Russian alphabet is arguably one of the most difficult letters. It's the Y. Y. If you look at it, it looks weird and it sounds weird. Y. Now, there are a couple of tips that I have here on how to pronounce it correctly. The first one is that first try saying let's first talk about an English equivalent. There is not a real English equivalent, except for maybe the way that British people pronounce the word for beach, beach, beach. It gets close to the E sound. Beach, beach, kind of like that. But a way to pronounce this, if you say the E letter, E, and instead of saying the normal E, you put your jaw a little bit backwards, like E, E, and you pronounce it from here. E, E, E. It's very difficult to pronounce the normal E sound if you put your jaw backwards, like normal, like this. See the difference? A little bit backwards, and then pronounce it from here instead of like from your throat here. E, E. If you find this also difficult, another kind of trick that I've also heard people explain it, try saying an E and then act as if you're being punched in the stomach. So like, E, you know, a lot of air needs to go out from the same time. And this E is relatively common in a couple of common words. For example, the word for you, informal, is tri, tri. So T-E, tri, tri. If you find this letter difficult, don't worry, it will come with time, and you'll just need to spend some time practicing some exercises, and at a certain point it will click and then you'll understand how to pronounce it.
Ты. Ты.
The 30th letter is another letter that basically does not have a pronunciation. It's the soft sign, or мягкий знак. And what this letter does, it softens the previous consonant. So let me give you an example with the word for to speak. If you want to say he speaks, you say он говорит. Он говорит. Pay attention to the T at the end. It's quite hard. Он говорит. It's just a normal T at the end. But if you want to say the infinitive for to speak, you say говорит. And now there's a soft sign after the T. So just see if you can hear the difference. Говорит with the soft sign at the end. Говорит. Он говорит, говорит. It's like almost as if you're adding like some sort of like an S sound after it, but not adding it. Might doesn't really make sense, but this takes a while. Like the soft and hard consonants is a completely different topic that we'll need to talk about in a different video, how to do that. And the soft sign just softens the previous consonant. Might sound a little bit vague, but it's just part of learning Russian. And to be honest, if you don't say this too correctly, it's not that big of a deal. But with time and with exercises, you'll learn how to say it correctly. Just try to soften it a little bit.
Мягкий знак. Говорить. Говорить.
The 31st letter is the E. E. It kind of looks like a 3, but then a little bit more rounded. And it's being pronounced as, if you take the previous ye that we had before, but then without the y sound, just the e sound. An example of this word would be электричество, электричество, which means electricity. It's also, this letter is quite rare, so you won't see it that often. Just sometimes in the beginning of words, or rarely in, sometimes in translated words that are basically the same as in English, in Russian, where Russians really want to make sure that it sounds like and not like yeah, where they use the yeah.
Электричество. Электричество.
The 32nd letter of the Russian alphabet is also relatively easy. It's the U. U. You. And the English equivalent would be the word for you, like you, the viewer of this video. You are watching this video. You. And an example word of this would be Jupiter. Jupiter, which means Jupiter. Jupiter.
Юпитер. Юпитер.
Finally, the last letter in the Russian alphabet. It's a reverse R. Or better, the ya. The English equivalent of this would be like if you want to say the word for yacht, as in the big boat, yacht. The first one, how you pronounce the Y and the A after each other, ya. ya, ya. The funny thing about this letter is that it's also a word. It just means I, ya, I. So that's also another extra word that you now just learned. This letter in general is not too difficult for non-native speakers. Ya.
Я. Я.
Congratulations, you now know the Russian alphabet. If there are still specific letters that you find difficult, then I recommend you just listen through the entire video one more time, because every time you go through it will help you make the letters more clear, and it will also help you pronounce them better. If you want to know more about me and about how I became fluent in Russian, then check the link in the description to learn how I can help you speak better Russian.